welcome to Cameras Africa, and today we're going to be talking about lenses. Something that you should know is that for you to protect your lens from dust and getting scratches, it is always advisable for you to get a lens filter. Now this is an example of a UV lens filter that helps protect your lens from dust and scratches, especially for those of you who do a lot of outdoor photography, meaning you're always exposed to what is happening around you. Now we also have another filter, okay, which is called an ND filter. Now the difference between this and the UV filter is that this one you can actually adjust the amount of light that gets into your camera by simply turning this knob. Okay. Immediately you turn it, it either gets slightly dark or it gets brighter. For those of you who shoot video, you have a feature which is called an ND. This does the same exact thing. The filters are not as expensive as you might think, but with 1,000 shillings you will easily get one, depending on the size. So if you have around 1,000 to 2,500, you can easily grab yourself one of these. So to the lenses. There are two main categories of lenses. We have got what we call a prime lens and we have got a zoom lens. A prime lens normally has got a fixed focal length, and then a zoom lens is one where you can actually variate the focal length of the lens. For example, we have got a kit lens which is 1855. Okay. Now this has got a variable focal length. That is the difference between that and this, is that if your subject is standing still and you have got these two lenses, the person with this lens won't have to move to the subject to get either a close-up. They'll easily just zoom. But then if you have got a prime lens, then that means you'll have to move closer to your subject. Depending on what you're shooting, then you need to get a particular lens. But let me start from the top. We have got what we call a fish eye lens. A fish eye lens is a lens that goes from 8mm to 14mm. Now that is a fish eye lens. It normally comes with a board top. Now it will definitely be slightly more curved than this, because this is a 14 to 24 mm. So now this one goes now to a wide angle lens. Okay, a wide angle lens is between 14 to 35 mm. Then now from 35 mm to 85, that is a standard lens. And then now we have got a short zoom, which is now 85 to 135. Then now we have a zoom lens, which is now from 135 to 200. Then we have a super zoom. A super zoom would probably be something between these two. Actually, these two are super zoom lenses, because then now this is from 200 plus. How do you differentiate lenses? We have got lenses which have got fixed apertures, and then we have got those which have got variable apertures. How do you tell the two? When you buy a fixed aperture lens, what would happen is that anytime you're shooting, whether you're zooming or not zooming, it would stay at the same aperture. For example, if you're shooting with this lens, this is a Nikon 70-200 f2.8. Okay. When you either when you're shooting it at 200 or you're shooting it at 70, if you have it at a particular aperture which is around 2.8, the aperture won't change. The aperture will remain the same. But if you're using this lens, this is a Sigma lens. This is a Sigma for Canon. Okay, this is a 150 to 600 mm. But then it's a 5, its aperture is 5 to 6.3. That means when you're shooting it at the aperture of 5, okay, mind you, this is very good for wildlife, so if you're a wildlife photographer, I would advise you to get this lens. Okay. Now, when you're shooting with this at an aperture of 5, you have set your aperture at 5. The moment you start zooming from 150 as you go to 600, then you realize that your aperture will be changing as you zoom, and that is why it's called a variable aperture lens. We still have got a few zoom lens, but they have got fixed apertures. An example of it, but then this, I think this is still a 5.6 plus 6.3 aperture. So the more you zoom, the aperture changes as well. And then now we have got now the other category, which is now out of the fixed and the variable. You need to understand that the price difference is definitely not the same. For a prime lens, for a fixed aperture lens, the price is normally higher as compared to a variable lens. For example, would be this. So we have got a Canon. This is a push and pull. This is a push and pull zoom lens. Okay. So this is a 3.5 to a 5.6. Okay. And then we still have got a Canon, but then this is an EF, this is an RF. Okay. I'll explain to you the difference between an RF and an EF lens. But for the sake of example, this is a 2.8. This is a 2.8 aperture lens. Okay. And then this is a 3.5 to a 5.6. Assuming they were both EF lenses, okay, this one would be more expensive because it has got a fixed aperture. A fixed aperture means, one, it's heavier, and then it does much more than this, because once you zoom, you still remain with the same aperture as compared to a variable lens. I'm so sure at some point you have gone to a shop and you've asked for a lens, and you haven't really realized what the difference between the two similar lenses would be. The aperture is the biggest variant when it comes to that. The fixed the aperture, the more you pay. The more variable, the more affordable it becomes. Okay? So when you're talking about portrait lenses, a portrait lens would be an 85mm or a 70 to 200 2.8 or a 50mm lens. Those are, if you're looking for a really good portrait lens, I would advise you to either get an 85mm, a 50mm, or a 70 to 200 lens. They won't disappoint, because most of the time when you're looking for a portrait lens, the thing that you're looking for something that will focus really fast. Okay, and prime lenses are very good at that. And we are also looking to get a very nice bouquet at the background. Okay, now that is what we talked about last week. That is what the aperture does. It helps to give you a very good depth of field when you are taking your photos. Now, if you're starting out, the kind of lens that you normally get with the camera is what we call a kit lens. A kit lens, to me, this is the most useful lens that you have given any situation, because this lens is meant to shoot in whatever situation you're at, whether you're shooting a portrait or you're shooting an event or you're just shooting some still life. It will give you a very good job, but it will give you the best job. Okay, so this is just a starting kit. That's why it's called a kit lens, because it comes with the camera, especially the beginner cameras. Because once you start buying professional cameras, then they don't come with lenses. They expect you to buy the lenses separately, because you know best what you need for what you're shooting. Other than the portrait lenses, we also have got wide lenses. Now, a wide lens, this is a perfect example of a wide lens. This is a 14 to 24 f2.8 Nikon. This lens is super ideal, especially if you do a lot of landscapes and if you do a lot of interior shots. Okay, because it shoots really wide, and as you can see from the angle of how the lens is, okay, it has got a very curvy top. Okay. So one thing you need to know is that this lens will give you super wide. Okay, it will give you super wide angles, which are very, very good, especially when you're doing interiors. But then now you definitely have to go in Photoshop or whatever other software that you use to edit out, because you'll realize that at 24 you'll get your edges will be straight, but then at 14 you'll get that you'll have a little bit of beveling at the corners of your image. In terms of camera technology, where we are at the moment, we have gone to the mirrorless. We have gone to the mirrorless technology. Now with mirrorless Canon, we normally have what we call the RF lenses, or an RF mount. Okay, so this one you can easily mount at a Canon mirrorless camera, and then this is a full frame RF lens. This is an EF lens. An EF lens is the type of lens mount that you use when you're putting it on your normal camera, your normal DSLR cameras, not a mirrorless camera. So that is the major difference between the two. But in case you have a Canon camera and you're looking to upgrade to a mirrorless camera, you don't necessarily need to buy a different lens for starters, because you have got a mount. You can actually buy a mount that converts an RF to an EF lens. So you can still use your old lens on your new body, but then this is technology. With time you need to sell your old lens so that you can buy the new generational lens, because then it gives you better looking image when you're using this. And then we have got Sony lenses. Sony, if you're aware of what is happening in terms of technology and cameras, you'll know that Sony were the first ones to go the mirrorless way. And with that they came with these good lenses, the E-mount lenses. Okay. According to me, Sony is way above in terms of the mirrorless game, and they have got really amazing lenses, and they have got what you call, for you who love shooting cinemas, they have got these amazing lenses that they call the anamorphic lens. Anamorphic lenses are very good, because that is the new age of filmmaking in terms of lenses. So an anamorphic lens, it's an upgrade from the normal 35mm film that we were used to. Let me explain to you what the 35mm film did. If you remember some years back, we're talking about in the 80s and early 90s, we were still using film when we were recording, when we were taking photos. Now those dimensions that were used, those are what we normally refer to as the standard film settings. So anytime we have got lenses, we normally go back to that settings to refer to it. But then now with the anamorphic, what they have done is that they have changed. Okay. So right now what the anamorphic does is that it shoots really wide, something that you normally see on Blu-ray or IMAX. They normally use anamorphic lenses, because then now they give them different ratios. They give them 2.4 meters to 1 meter. Now that is the ratio that you get when you're using this. Again, let me go back to zoom lenses. Now all these, I think most of these are zoom lenses. Okay. When you're talking about a zoom lens, it again depends on what you're doing. If you're a fan of shooting wildlife, then you need what you call a super zoom. Okay, because then you don't want, most of the time you don't want to encroach into the privacy of the animal, and you want to get as the most natural image of an animal in its surrounding. So that's why a super zoom is important when you're considering a lens that you're shooting to go. So if you're planning on going to the national park, Nairobi National Park, then you can probably get this. And then now the thing is, if the price range is out of reach, then you could probably consider this. This is slightly more affordable. Okay, this is 75 to 300. Okay, if you can compare it to to this, okay, the price difference it's huge. It's just ridiculous, okay. But the kind of image you'll get with this, you cannot compare to this. But then you'll still achieve a better image with this as compared to what you will get with this. Now, the other thing that people need to know is that you can still achieve really good images even if you don't have a really expensive lens. How? This is something I actually learned on as I was starting out. If you cannot afford a 70 to 200, then you may as well get a 75 to 300 lens. Because when you're shooting it at 300, you'll achieve the same depth of field that you can achieve with this. It's just that right now you need to boost your ISO a little bit more for you to get the clarity that you get with this. Because this one will be shooting at 2.8 and this one will be shooting at 6.3. But in terms of the background, you'll definitely achieve something very, very similar, and unless somebody has got a really keen eye, then they won't notice the difference. And then again, oh yes, there's a question I was asked before we went live. It's what would be a good lens, especially for those of you who are doing food blogs and you're probably wanting to do a vlog. You just bought a new camera, you're looking for something to do with a vlog, or you just want to take photos of the full presentation that you're doing. Now, immediately you buy the camera, like I said, you get a kit lens with it. But then as you continue and you are in the process of improving the quality of work that you're doing, then you could either get a 50 millimeter lens, okay, a 50 millimeter prime fixed lens, okay. That would probably be a 1.2 if you can afford. But a 1.8 should actually serve you well. Okay, and then if you cannot get this, then probably you need something wider. Then I would say consider getting a 35 millimeter lens. It will serve you perfect. So again, just to recap on what I've told you, is that we've got a variety of lenses. We have got the super zoom lenses, okay. We have got a zoom lens, and then we have got what we call a standard lens. Then we have got a wide angle lens, and then you have got the fish eye. Now, depending on what you're shooting, then it's good to determine what exactly you want to get. And then remember, we have got a variable aperture. We have got variable aperture lenses. That is a lens which has got an aperture which changes. If you see your lens has got a place where it's written F, and then either 3 dash to 6 or to 5 point something, that's a variable lens, because that means anytime when you're zooming in, the aperture changes. And then now we have got the prime lenses. With the prime lenses, they don't change the aperture whether you're zooming or you're not. It's up to you now to decide exactly when you want to change the aperture. Don't forget, we still have got a competition that's running. If you're into fashion, if you're into portraits, or you love working with lights, then kindly just take a photo and then put a hashtag to New Beginnings and then tag us. That is hashtag Cameras Africa or Cameras Kenya, and welcome to the competition. There are so many gifts to be won among them, okay? But kindly just take a photo and then post it on social media, hashtag to New Beginnings, and then also tag us at Cameras Africa or Cameras Kenya, depending on the platform that you're using. But then just read the poster for more details. Thank you.